Restor was set up, and it's gone from a few hundred to over 250,000 projects now, which is incredible just to see that traction.
Welcome. Today we're here with Tom Elliott. He is the CEO of Restor. Restor is a geospatial platform that connects nature stewards to knowledge, resources, and markets. Last year at New York Climate Week, we had Tom's colleague and the founder of Restor, Tom Crowther, on the show. So 2 Toms. Thank you, Tom, for sitting down with us at this New York Climate Week 2025.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent.
Look forward to the conversation.
And so for people who aren't familiar with Restor, can you give us a bit of a high level of what it is and the history and journey you've had?
Yeah, well, the history of Restor, gosh, it started, I think, probably around 2015, so almost 10 years ago. The founder you just mentioned, Tom Crowther, did some incredible new research that showed that Earth was home to 3 trillion trees and had once been home to 6 trillion trees on the planet. Previous estimates to that were that we had 400 billion trees on Earth, estimates from NASA. And so this was something that totally redefined our understanding of the status of forests around the world. And I, at the time, was living in Singapore, working for a big consultancy firm, and sort of got very excited about this research that was coming out. I was really impressed by it. Had got chatting to Tom about the future of what that could hold, and we're really fortunate to then be supported by some funders that saw the potential for this new approach to doing scientific research. So can we do what Tom had done for the forests for all aspects of ecosystems, whether that's the microbes in the soil to the fungi that associate with forests, all the way up to tree height and canopy cover and all the rest of it. So rather than studying the minutiae of an ecosystem and specializing in that one particular thing, the bacteria that sits on the hind leg of a beetle in Thailand, can we understand these large global scale patterns? And so I stepped into the role of managing director of the research group, the Crowther Lab, that was set up to then do that work for all aspects of Earth's ecosystems. And the vision was really to democratize access to those maps to land managers around the world, who could then use them to inform their efforts. This funder that we were speaking to in the Netherlands supported NGOs, projects on the ground in Africa and South America, and they saw the need to provide this data to NGOs like that to really equip them with the science to be more effective with the work that they're doing.
What was it about the research that Tom had done on trees that was that had led to such a breakthrough and understanding? Like, was it a technical, enablement that had happened because of what we're now getting from satellite imagery? Or help me understand that more.
Yeah, Tom's ability to find networks of scientists around the world that were collecting ground truth data. Different pockets of scientists in different regions are all to do their studies, collecting information on tree height, on tree width, species type, et cetera, and he was able to find these different networks and pull them together. And so a network called the Global Forest Biodiversity Initiative was set up, as well as the Global Soil Biodiversity Initiative, and others that were bringing together, tens of millions of measurements of biodiversity and of ground truthed information. So previous estimates were only at global scale were only from satellites. And this was a big breakthrough, was kind of pulling together all that ground data. But the second thing is also the advancements in technology. Machine learning approaches at the time were just really taking off, and allowing them to correlate that ground data with measured information that they have for every location on the planet. So you build a correlation with somewhere where you have measured ground data, and then you make a prediction about what the ground data would look like based on the satellite imagery you have for all the other locations. And the advancement in that technology has also been insane.
We're talking about 10 years ago.
I mean, I remember one of the scientists a couple of weeks ago was telling me, calculations that would take 3 months are now taking like 3 hours to do. Like, it's incredible the data processing speed that's happening now to allow them to find out new things as well.
Got it. Okay, so you went from consulting in Singapore to heading up, and working with Tom Crowther on research. Continue the journey.
So it was all about, how can we then provide, take this science and turn it into action. So it's not just being locked up within the academic literature. It is being used. And my role at the lab was really to build partnerships with the United Nations, with the World Economic Forum. And eventually we were able to partner with Google, whose technology we were using to do this, this mapping, to then turn the science into a platform that could provide communities with the access to the data that they need. And that today is known as Restor. And so my role was then to go from the MD of the lab to CEO of Restor, which I took over a couple of years ago. And it's really been incredible to sort of see that traction go from, interest of a few NGOs globally, or a few hundred NGOs globally that were coming to an academic research group to say, how can I get access to this data? But can I also be listed on your website so I can be shown to be aligned with, using cutting edge science? And an academic research group's website is not the place to really do that. So that's part of the reason that Restor was set up, and it's gone from a few hundred to over 250,000 projects now. Sort of 5 years post launch in 2021, which is incredible just to see that traction.
250,000 projects. I mean, as far as I understand things, it is by far the largest platform for local nature stewards. And of course, the URL restor.eco. If people aren't familiar, they can just hop right on and instantly see what projects are happening in their area. And a wealth of scientific data and maps and layers. Maybe you can speak more to some of the features on the site.
Absolutely, yeah. So anyone registers with Restor, you can go on there and, as you say, explore whether it's restoration, conservation, or sustainable land management. We've got a huge influx of sort of agroforestry projects now coming onto the platform, showing the products that they're producing from those forests, which is really amazing to see. And, you can use the search bar to find the particular region or, land management strategy that they're using, zoom in and then understand, what is the carbon storage above ground, below ground, what's the potential carbon storage of that project. What is the state of biodiversity? We're really excited to bring in this new seed biocomplexity index that's been produced by the lab, which is a composite of a lot of biodiversity data sets that can help organizations really try to understand the state of biodiversity at their site compared to a natural state. And it's constantly evolving. More science is coming online. It feels like, every month that's going into our queue of data sets that we want to make available. It's a really, really exciting period. I can talk more about those as well later.
Maybe also just to kind of get our basics, I would love to understand. So you have this close partnership with Crowther Lab. How is Restor structured as an organization, and kind of maybe scope of amount of team members and collaborators you're working with?
So Restor is an NGO based in Switzerland, non-profit, and we have about 20 or so team members, 22 team members, from a management team, but also we've got geospatial scientists within the team that are helping to generate these insights and bring on new visualizations onto the platform. We've then got an incredible team of regional engagement leads around the world, which are really the secret to the success in scaling the platform. This is about 9 people around the world in Indonesia, Brazil, Uganda, India, Costa Rica, and they are helping organizations to onboard to the platform, helping to explain some of the data layers and how they can use it to really showcase their project to the world. And yeah, it's those deep networks that they have locally, and they'll go out to conferences and really kind of explain and build those networks that way. Mm-hmm. And then we have a fantastic network of scientific collaborators. The Crowther Lab, we continue to share data with the Crowther Lab, sort of from the database so that new science can be produced. So not only are we working with scientists to bring on new information about the state of Earth's ecosystems, there was brilliant research produced just a couple of weeks ago on fragmented forests, which we're looking to get into the platform, showing that, you know, we've suffered more fragmentation of forests than we initially understood, but without that with that information, we can now start to address that, which is really exciting. But also, we are sharing the data back to the scientists. They've never had a database of how land is being managed around the world, and now they understand what strategies are being applied to different land parcels. You can now start to create new insights about how we can produce, increases in biodiversity and economic well-being for local people. What are the strategies that are delivering that?
Yeah, because if we have a common digital platform that is creating these network effects, where you have so you're bringing in data from the scientific community and making that available to land stewards, nature stewards, things that weren't previously understood, like, oh, here are the species I should see in my area, and oh, here's what's happening with the biomass, and oh, here are how the climate and the weather patterns and the historical data, and like, here's what my neighbors are doing. But then also all of that activity is generating really important signals and going back to the scientific community, kind of creating this huge, robust ecosystem of, what are the trends happening in agroforestry? What are the trends happening in agriculture and yield production? What are the restoration activities? Who's planting what? And like, we can just increase the scale, connectivity, velocity of these restoration activities. Like, the mission is restore, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's this symbiotic relationship where both are kind of helping each other. And we've been some really cool findings. So Susan Cook-Patton, who's one of the lead scientists at TNC, used Restor's data to show that 80% of the sites on Restor are having a cooling effect on the climate, which is just incredible. They would not have known that otherwise. So she did some incredible work there to sort of quantify that. We've also got research which isn't yet published, but coming out of the lab to show across all of the sites on Restor, when you look at sort of indices like, the greenness of the sites and the leaf area index, that since the date of intervention that was registered on Restor, we are seeing an increase, about a 2 to 3% increase in the greenness, the leaf area index of these projects, whether they are slightly different, but whether it's restoration or conservation or natural assisted restoration, we are seeing increases, which is just incredible to show that across the entire community there is this gradual increase on average. And that then creates more energy for more restoration. We hope more investment will then flow into these projects, because the ones that are being transparent are clearly having this positive impact. And
So one thing I've always appreciated about Restor from a distance, and then as I've been getting to know you guys over the last couple of years, is this emphasis on local communities, like small-scale nature stewards. All sizes, of course, but like not losing sight of the fact that so much of our planet's fate is connected to these frontline communities. So I'm curious, like, as you're on this customer journey with so many, 250,000 projects around the world, what are you learning now in 2025? Like, what are some of the latest insights, observations, feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, we often get asked, like, what is there a way of saying, like, what the restoration strategy should be, or what they need to achieve successful restoration? And I think we've always been very cognizant that restoration, although a lot of the science that's being done is at a global scale, it is just inherently local. It's so specific to those locations. Both, ecologically, there is a lot of nuance happening, but also socioeconomically, there are circumstances which mean only those communities know how to manage those lands. And so we have to, figure out how we give them the tools. Restore cannot be prescriptive. It's trying to be descriptive and provide data that is there to inform their efforts. And so, we're always trying to understand more from those communities. I think the big trend that is coming out is that they're all telling us that 86% do require more finance. They're underfunded, critically underfunded.
86%.
Yeah, 86% of the organizations on Restore are joining to try and get more access to finance. So that's something that we're really trying to address with how we're building out profiles now on the platform. For example, we're also finding that 70% of the projects that are joining to try and connect with local experts, to find employees or to find volunteers that can help what they're doing. 69% are dependent on volunteers, which to me is in one way fantastic that you get so much support for these projects, but on the other, it makes it really hard. And 35% are, reliant on short-term employment to do what to achieve their goals. And so it has all these implications for how can we make sure that they have the right skill sets to deliver the goals that they are setting themselves, because with such short-term employment, with so many volunteers, obviously a lot of knowledge is leaving these groups and not sustaining, and it makes it really hard for them to grow, which is of course connected to the finance piece as well. So we're at the moment working with Accenture's corporate citizenship team to really try and dig into that and understand, what are the skills that the restoration economy really needs to grow, because the feeling is that finance will come. We're at New York Climate Week. There's been many big announcements made about the Tropical Forest Finance Facility, for example, and other mechanisms that are coming online. But unless these organizations have the requisite skill sets to then execute, the finance will be wasted, and we need to make sure that everyone's prepared to help.
It speaks to the importance of ecological skill training centers and education centers, because these are localized knowledge sets as well, locally informed and what works in, temperate agroforestry systems and, subtropical, ecosystems. Like there's a lot of nuance here. And so we're going to also need to kind of really equip that skills training, capacity building.
You're right. It may not be employees or volunteers. It may be technical capacity building, centers of excellence where they can learn this stuff. I think you see like the successful projects on Restore are the ones that have all these connections in their profile to other organizations that are also on the platform. And you start to see, this is where the different skills are coming from. It's other organizations that specialize in monitoring that work in that location.
Exactly. What we see on our farm in New Zealand, like we're getting a really nice, steady stream of volunteers, and we only recently started to kind of really welcome volunteers more proactively, because we were worried that it would almost kind of, disrupt or slow down the operations of the farm as we were getting established, and kind of like, you have to train someone up only to then have them leave. Kind of these short-term engagements can be a lot of energy to support. But now that we have enough capacity to hold it, we've been kind of welcoming that energy and seeing it as an education opportunity.
Nice.
And it's been super additive, like and generative for everyone involved. Like it really works, because it's like it's education, it's community building, it's skills training. People are able to contribute, and there's so many tasks around land restoration that don't require specialized skills. It's like today's harvest day, today's weeding day. It's like a lot of stuff. It's like you don't need to go get 2 years of education to pull some weeds out of the ground, right? But just being on an actual working farm or restoration site is extremely useful for a lot of folks to understand and learn more of what it means to be with land.
Yeah, and then I'm sure they will bring other skill sets in, that they come with as well. And I like this sort of correlation. Tom, our founder, is always talking about, a fundamental principle of ecology is that nothing exists in isolation. Everything depends on each other to survive, and these ecosystems are all kind of working together to grow. And it is so true, even when it comes to the diversity of organizations and people that need to work together to make restoration successful. And if you can sort of replicate that.
Yeah. And I think it just speaks to, again, the potential here of like having these platforms like Restor where you can see experiences that someone else has had.
Yeah.
We can start thinking about reputation systems, trust building systems, like, before and afters, and look at what I was able to achieve on this site. And, being able to, like, the sharing in Web 2 economy gives us a sense of like what's possible when you bring like the social features and the maps and, look at the scale of like Uber and Airbnb and what they've been able to achieve in terms of rewiring some of these industries. And like, I feel like you're one of the shining examples of what's possible in kind of the nature regeneration space with those types of digital patterns.
Yeah, it's something we are, I think, at the very early stages. It's nowhere near complete. There is plenty of development that we can do. But yeah, it's the foundations for, I think, what the movement needs is the sort of base layer of trust to help everybody grow. And there are some incredible organizations that are coming online to solve particular new technologies that are coming on that we want to integrate into Restor. I mean, Game Forest is a fantastic group that we work with that's working with other projects on Restor to help them better monitor their sites using drones. I know David's been on the podcast before.
David and Sharfi, a huge shout out. So much respect for those two and that whole organization. Game Forest is great.
Yeah. And like you say, certifications, something we need to build into the profile to build even more trust in what the organizations are doing. And the kind of general message that we're giving to organizations is, the more information that you share with the community, the more trust you're building in your profile, and the more likely you are to secure these beneficial partnerships and finance.
Right.
Whether it is before and after sliders and photos, or whether it is more kind of, administrative information about your project plans and, impact that you're going to generate. But all of that together creates a really strong trust signals that we think are going to help them all grow.
Okay, so we've talked about you have this deep scientific global network.
Yeah.
And Tom Crowther's just rock star at that, right? It always amazes me how many different scientists and institutions and academic groups that are kind of feeding into and in community with what you were doing. But I also want to pull in this thread of partnerships, because when I spend time in communities around, projects that are trying to support grassroots nature initiatives, it isn't always in the same breath that I hear we're working with Accenture, right? And Accenture is maybe just one tiny example, but I know you have a wide portfolio of partnerships, across the funding landscape and the corporate landscape, and you're kind of providing this interesting bridge function. And I know this is squarely on your shoulders as well. So I'm curious, what's enabling this? What's your philosophy? How do you build these partnerships? I mean, you're here in New York. How are you getting larger institutions excited and bringing all of this together in service to nature stewards?
Great question. I think there's a lot to unpack there. But I think Restor started in that first phase of when we set that vision of how can we, produce best-in-class science and democratize it to, this network of land stewards. We now have to connect those land stewards to, the economy and to systems that are going to help them scale. And I think there is much broader recognition than there was a few years ago that we are totally dependent on these stewards of nature, indigenous communities that have managed these lands, that know how to manage the land to bring back biodiversity. And we're partnering with, mission-aligned groups that understand that, Restor is a place that not only can they use to assess the impact of the programs that they're supporting, but it can be a tool for the communities that are part of those programs to, bring more visibility to their work, maybe gain financing, but also, monitor their own impact and use it as a tool to upload data. Yeah, we've got partnerships with the likes of Salesforce that are supporting some fantastic projects around the world. We're also working with UBS Optimus. They do some incredible work with a variety of different ecosystems across Asia. We're announcing at New York this week our partnership with the Mangrove Breakthrough, which is a really cool network of networks almost that's bringing together with the Global Mangrove Alliance a goal to try and channel $4 billion of investment into 15 million hectares of mangroves globally. We have traction with mangrove projects. There's about 3 million hectares of mangroves on Restor today, but how can we really, grow that up to their 15 million hectare goal and start, as we've talked about, building up those profiles, building up the trust so they can channel the $4 billion of finance that they believe needs to happen by 2030 to really achieve that 15 million hectare goal.
Can you remind us why mangroves are so important?
Well, they're incredibly complex ecosystems, but they support a huge amount of life. So it's, I think, something like 60% of the world's, they support 60% of biodiversity in those locations. And so losing them would have a sort of catastrophic impact for those regions. But they are also, mangrove farms that can help produce, more sustainable livelihoods for people locally. And I think the exciting thing about that is that Restor has always been a global platform trying to facilitate all, data across all ecosystem types. And the exciting thing about that is we're going to really drill into one particular ecosystem type. And we can then start to understand the different sort of business models. I know last year, Tom on the podcast was talking about how do we make nature the economic choice? That's really how we're going to scale finance for these projects. But by understanding the individual business models that can be built around mangroves and the connection to maybe corporate value chains and how they're actually providing a lot of services for ecotourism businesses, for example. We can then bring greater transparency and link finance that's coming from ecotourism businesses or whatever it might be to support the communities that are providing that that service that biodiversity provides.
It makes so much sense. I mean, we're going to see these continued waves of interest and okay, now we got to focus on reef restoration. Okay, now there's more of an understanding of the role of pollinators and the collapsing pollinator species. Now we need to think about we need to think about all of it and be doing it all the time. But I guess institutional finance and government priorities and these sorts of energies come and crash in waves. And to be able to kind of look into the global database of restoration projects and say, okay, where do these resources go? And, you can also slice it with kind of a more marketplace lens. Who are the coffee growers and where's the cacao coming from? And so once again, the importance of having these robust mapping systems that are finding and identifying these projects where we have high integrity data coming into the system and an ecosystem of different partners across the data layers, the science layers, the restoration, land stewards, et cetera.
That's exactly right. We have to be ready because there's always, energy gets behind a particular initiative, announcements are made and commitments are made, and we have to be ready with a pipeline of credible projects that can actually be supported. And I think that as Restor, that is our pure focus. And with Mangrove Breakthrough, that's going to be our pure focus for the next, 12 months. There are already incredible mangrove projects that are on Restor. There's an organization called Carbon Ethics in Indonesia, which is working with local communities to help them understand the challenges of mangroves, what the loss of mangroves could do to those ecosystems. They're now bought into, getting access to the carbon market, and they're ready. They're really well skilled up because of the investment that Carbon Ethics has made in those communities. But there are others that aren't there yet. We've got to help all of them on that journey to think about how they are presenting themselves to the world so that investment can flow when it is lined up.
Any other comments on kind of how do we continue to remove the barriers and roadblocks for the financing to get to the projects?
There's always work that can be done. I think that's what we're learning. One of I think there's sort of three things. The first is the scientific data. Funders that have been present in this space, I'm discovering, don't understand all of the data that is out there, all the science that is available to evaluate these projects. Even the biggest corporates don't understand how to use the data sets as well. And so we are really pushing the team to think about how do we simplify some of this stuff to create insights that can be decision useful. We're also participating in this Nature Positive initiative, which is for companies that are trying to, there's so much data out there. It's really hard for us to take action unless we get consensus on a core list of metrics that we can, have consistency across industry and across geography on how we are measuring nature positive. And if we need to dive deeper into more data, what are the criteria by which, because data collection is insanely expensive, what are the criteria on which we then delve into more depth? And we're part of that process, supporting some of our sponsors like Manulife and Salesforce, because we want to get insights from that can then be applied to local communities as well. So they can also have a very good understanding of how they can measure nature positive and where they need to collect data. So that's the first thing. The second is on standardization of sort of more administrative information. How can we collect things like land tenure and financial information from these projects in a standardized way, so they're not always being asked by different funders to collect data in different ways. So I think the standardization of that process will be really important. And we're looking at ways with Mangrove Breakthrough about how we can incorporate AI into that process to sort of streamline and speed it up. And then I think the third thing is, there is a need to collect better local information in a scalable way. And so we launched earlier this year this concept of self-reported data. Lots of organizations since the start of the Restor have always been like, can we send you our data so we can upload it to the platform, whether it's tree inventory information or social impact data? And I've always just been like, please don't. We've got so much data we're already dealing with globally. Us trying to ingest and organize all of that is going to be incredibly hard. But this year we've now released these first self-reported data metrics. So we've spoken to the community and aligned on a core suite of metrics, which they can now upload into Restor. And we're going to be expanding that because, as measuring impact will be different. And we can try and find cohesion and consistency, but there will always be particular metrics for particular, impact goals that they're trying to achieve. And so I think that's the third thing. How can we make that flexible and scalable? So each organization can showcase its impact, how it wants to measure impact.
So many resonant themes with what we're seeing across the landscape. And just really excited that you guys have continued to stay with it and persist and building coalitions. And it's a great journey.
Thanks so much. And I think the more that we can build coalitions and work with organizations like you guys and some of the groups that I've mentioned, the more we're gonna scale this thing. And the last thing I want to mention, which I think I left out of one of my answers, is connecting all this to the goals of governments. I feel like these overarching goals of the Global Biodiversity Framework can be really unifying. And we've got a partnership with the UN FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, which is the custodian of the Target 2 goal to restore 30% of degraded lands globally. And so we've done our first iteration of sending data to them, showing that there's 66 million hectares across all the countries that are now being restored, and they're now providing that data to countries so they can report against their...
Excellent. So the projects on Restor, their data is going directly to FAO in terms of ensuring that goal of 30% reduction.
Anonymized data, but it's showing that how communities are contributing to those global goals. And if we can connect communities and companies to the goals of governments, I really think we've got a huge chance and bring transparency to that of achieving our global goals. So it's going to be tough, but it's exciting. It feels like it's coming together.
Awesome. Well, good luck this week in New York. I'm sure you have tons of meetings and partner discussions and events and everything else.
I'm hitting my steps goals, 15,000 a day. I think I'm at so far, ferrying around New York. But no, it's been good. Thanks so much for having me, Matthew.
Really any other final thoughts or closing comments?
join the movement. Maybe
join the
say.
movement. Exactly. Join the movement.
If you want to register your site and you're on Restor, please do so today, whether it's a garden or a conservation project.
Yep. And you can do that at restor.eco. And you can also find all of our conversations from here at New York Climate Week at maearth.com. Thanks for being with us.